today to join. Edwin, there you are.
Perfect.
How you doing?
Hi, Alex. Yeah, good. Thanks. Apologies for the technical delay, but it seems to work now anyway. So
no worries. Well, we've got you on, so that's perfect. And Edwin, we'll go straight into it. I've managed to do the our preambles to what we talk about, who we are, and what we're trying to accomplish here.
perfect.
So, Edwin, let's start with this. Tell us more about Oriens Aviation and about your company.
Yeah, so Oriens Aviation, we are essentially a services provider. So we provide service for everything around the aircraft ownership of a Pilatus product. So whether that's a PC-12 or a PC-24. So we can assist with the purchase of an aircraft. We sell airplanes, both used and new. We can assist with management, with pilot training. So we also have that on offer as well. We also have maintenance. So we're a full service provider for the aircraft. Really anything around the operation of your aircraft we can assist with. And we're based right here in Biggin Hill, which is a fantastic airport near London. They've just had extended opening hour approval as well, so very easily accessible.
And I always ask some of our experts that have graced us with their time on these Insta Live sessions. How has COVID-19 affected your business? Did you have to furlough staff, or have you been able to keep things moving forward?
No, we've actually managed to continue operating. I wouldn't say it's normal. Obviously, COVID has significantly changed the way we operate the business, but certainly from a maintenance point of view, we were permitted to remain open, so we did, but on very reduced staff. So we had skeleton staff, open 24/7, 7 days a week. So a lot of customers who weren't able to fly were able to utilize that and actually have their aircraft maintained. So they're able to do a lot of aircraft maintenance. I think Biggin Hill reported a significant increase in PC-12 movements through the lockdown. So I have to say Biggin Hill have been very, very supportive of us as well. And they've had a very pragmatic approach. On the sales side, we haven't furloughed anyone. We've just been working from home. There's no real need to work in the office.
Yeah.
I'd say probably within the last month or so, we've just been working as normal. So now we're all back in the office, still on very reduced skeleton staff and maintenance. So they have separate workstations, but pretty much business as normal.
And Edwin, obviously, great having you today, because you can give us a view as a business owner, but also as an accomplished pilot, as you are. You fly, privately for business, but also for your own company, Oriens Aviation, as you say, when you're trying to sell aircraft. In your view, can you give us, briefly some benefits of the PC-12 model and the PC-24 model that you represent?
Absolutely. I think before I get onto the specifics, there are some key traits that Pilatus embody, and there are certain key elements that all Pilatus aircraft have. The first thing is really the versatility of the cabin. So the ability not only to have a versatile cabin with a large cargo door, you can move the seats around so you can configure the interior in different ways, but also versatility in terms of operating in and out of short strips. So with Pilatus products in general, because they have a very slow takeoff and landing speed and a shorter takeoff and landing speed, you have the ability to get in and out of short fields. So it's versatility, also size. When people see Pilatus products, whether it's the 12 or the 24, the first thing they say is, wow, didn't realize just how big it was.
Yeah.
And when they get in the cabin as well, they see the sheer size and volume of the cabin. The other thing is value. One of the key things of the PC-12, and we're trying to do the same, of course, for the PC-24, is the residual value. And that's very much the ethos of Pilatus, how Pilatus works with its Pilatus centers, also the quality of the aircraft. All of those things enhance the residual value. Now, the PC-24 is obviously new, so time will tell, but everything we've learned from the PC-12, we're replicating and applying to the PC-24. So we feel that the PC-12 is a good benchmark. Also lower maintenance costs and operating costs. So I mentioned the quality of the build, but everything has been built around reducing operating costs. And it's really been, for example, all the cowlings on the PC-12 are quick release. So you're not paying an engineer to undo lots of rivets. So, that reduces operating costs, it reduces downtime. The other thing is customer support. Again, the way Pilatus do it, and working with Oriens Aviation with distributors. So Pilatus have been voted #1 by Professional Pilot Magazine in the US for the last 18 consecutive years.
Wow.
Another key thing for Pilatus in general is innovation. So Pilatus are constantly innovating, constantly developing new products. The R&D budget at Pilatus is very high. You've only got to look at the new airplane, the PC-24, which everyone knows about. The PC-12, of course, is very proven, but constantly being innovated and improved. So that's really Pilatus as a whole. That's an overview of Pilatus. Getting to the specifics, the PC-24, again, the first thing that strikes people is just how large it is. It really has a mid-sized cabin. It's a very wide and spacious cabin with a flat floor.
Yeah.
So you get all of that large cabin, but you get it at light jet operating economics. So for example, you have a quiet power mode, which is, instead of having an APU, which adds weight and cost, you can actually cycle the engine back into an APU type fuel flow and benefit from all the advantages of an APU without the cost and the additional weight penalty of an APU. So again, it's mid-size functionality, but light jet operating costs. In flight, when people get on the airplane, the first thing they're stunned by is the initial acceleration. You go full power, release the brakes, it just shoots down the runway. Very strong climb performance. Always amazes people how quickly it gets in the air and then climbs, and with very little fuss. It's very, very quiet, and that's what really impresses people. As with the PC-12, people said they love the PC-12, but they just want a bit more speed. So you've got the cargo door as well. That's another key selling point. And the short field capability, as already mentioned before. And really with the PC-12, coming back to that particular aircraft, I think a lot of people are very familiar with the airplane. It's proven. And what's very interesting, we've just seen EBAA data that shows that if you look at, so basically it's a graph of absolute aircraft movements on one axis and rate of growth or rate of decline on the other axis. And if you look at all the aircraft that are growing, the PC-12 is #1 in terms of absolute aircraft movements. It's astonishing. And we've only recently, this is in Europe, and we've only recently had single engine IFR approval for commercial operations. So the fact that it's already that high, even before there's been a real uptake of commercial operations, I think is testament to the industry's confidence in the aircraft. And again, innovation. So Pilatus have just released a new version of the PC-12. So there's even more safety and reliability through enhanced engine systems and avionics, even more interior comfort, and you have even more predictability of direct operating costs and value retention. And this has partly been learned from the PC-24. So there are programs that can actually, give you more predictability of your direct operating costs on the PC-12 now, as well as the 24. And I think in this day and age, it has to be said, it's got to be the greenest pressurized business aircraft out there. And that's really, really important. I mean, I've actually done a very crude analysis of miles per gallon. If you look at the fuel burn of a PC-12 per seat mile compared with a family car, and it compares very favorably. So that's an impressive argument as well.
That's fascinating. And obviously, given what you just said there, Edwin, that, Pilatus have a fantastic R&D budget to keep innovating. But, in this obviously COVID-19 situation, which has, cancelled all of our plans, for the year, and what we are all trying to do with our own businesses, how has that affected sales of Pilatus aircraft? And if I may ask, your opinion in business aviation in general.
Sure. So I think, business aviation in general, public transport, whether that's by air or surface transport, is becoming much more challenging. There's no question about that. And so business aviation can actually offer a solution to that. If you then think that there was a survey that was done, an analysis that was done, I think it was McKinsey, but I might be wrong, but I think only 10% of people who can actually afford to travel privately do so. So the vast majority of people who can afford to travel privately haven't yet discovered business aviation. So the whole, the COVID-19 situation, the virus is a catalyst for that. And it's driving new people into business aviation. And we've already seen this. We've seen this in recent months in charter and in fractional as well. I can give you a very, very good example that's close to my heart. We have a customer who's got a PC-12. They've had the PC-12 for about 3 or 4 years already. And he used to do a weekly commute by train to London, and he has a meeting in London. He takes his PC-12. So what he does now is he gets his pilot to position his aeroplane to a grass strip that's closer to where he lives, and he flies down to London for his meeting. 20 minutes later, he's in his meeting and then flies back again. That's only possible with a PC-12, and it's getting him out of the train. Again, in the COVID environment, he just doesn't want to travel by train anymore. Yeah. So that's an example of how you can use a PC-12 in the current time. We're getting more. So going back to COVID, we're seeing more sales inquiries from people who are new to aircraft ownership, and therefore they're on a perceived budget. They don't really understand aircraft ownership, and we're having to guide them and to hold their hand, and they're on a perceived budget, and therefore there's more of an interest in used aircraft. Interestingly enough, they're saying we've got a budget of X amount and we want a used aircraft without really understanding the ins and outs of it. And used aircraft can be very beneficial for a customer, but very often it's hard to find used aircraft because most of our customers hang on to their airplanes. So to find the right airplane at a price point they're looking for is sometimes proves challenging. And of course, with the new aircraft, you have all the benefits of warranty, and customer factory support for the customer is even greater through warranty. The other great thing that we're experiencing is the PC-12 at its price point. If you look at all business aviation aircraft, really allows us to capture more of the entry-level customers. So people who are experiencing business aviation for the first time are likely to start on an aircraft such as a PC-12, simply because it's entry level, and we can provide an upgrade path for them. They can move from the PC-12 to the PC-24. This experience has very much been reflected by Pilatus centres worldwide, so we remain very optimistic for the short to mid-term. However, in the UK, the furlough scheme expires at the end of July, so we don't know what the longer term economic impact will be. So there might be a sort of a more general macro trends that might offset some of the short-term benefits. But in the short term, we're very positive and optimistic.
Yeah, I think on the furlough, I think you said that July. I may be wrong when I say this, but I did think it had been extended to the end of October.
Correct. But I think the companies have to pay more in October. So that's it. Yeah.
Obviously, this is perfect because obviously we're using the private flyer platform, and my next few questions are actually, the benefit we have with this is that we can serve our private flyer followers, but also we're able to carry this over to another platform of non-aviators or people that own businesses but hadn't thought about private aviation for their business or leisure needs.
Mm-hmm.
So these next few questions are going to be advantageous to both platforms. You have given an answer already, but in times of crisis, we're all aware at the moment that things have been highlighted. Commercial air travel is facing huge challenges, and at the same time, business aviation will play a major part, in travel going forward. For both sets of audiences, how would you see the advantages of traveling by private aircraft to meet one's needs, in twofold situations for business or for private leisure travel?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So I think in general, before we get into the specifics of private versus business travel, I think there's always been an element of complementarity between business aviation and the airlines. So business aviation is far more point to point. It also serves destinations that aren't always served by the airline. And this will only increase. So I think as more regional airlines cut routes, that trend will increase. Also, business aviation is swifter. You have the transit on the ground is much more painless, and also it's more discreet. So you're going through a private FBO terminal rather than through a large airport. And again, especially in these after COVID-19, that's going to become even more important for customers who are not going to particularly want to be in a very crowded airport environment, and they're going to want a little bit more discretion. So I think those are arguments that have always held for business aviation that will apply even more now. And that's been exacerbated in the post-COVID world. So I'd say specifically so coming on to the specifics now. So for businesses, clearly businesses will have an increased need to protect their staff. But at the same time, they have to continue to strive for productivity. So it's a very challenging environment for businesses who have to continue to try and make money, but protect their staff at the same time. So I have no doubt, I'm sure of this, business travel will be less. And I think companies are already experiencing this. I've already spoken to a number of businesses who said, we've saved so much money on travel. Just simply the fact that we haven't been able to travel for the last couple of months. It's been unbelievable. So I think businesses will be looking at their travel budgets more, and there will be less business travel. However, there are only so many video conferencing meetings that you can actually do. We have a prospect, for example, right now, who's got multiple business locations in the UK, and that requires site visits. And there's no way you can do a site visit with Zoom, or video conferencing. It's impossible. And also securing an important new business relationship. So the face-to-face contact, developing a good rapport with somebody, so much better face-to-face rather than via video conference. So clearly there's going to remain a need to travel. So I think in summary, I believe people and businesses will travel less than they used to, but they might end up spending more on their business travel when they actually do it. And again, I think that's a great opportunity for our industry, for the whole industry in general. So that's really for businesses. So for private individuals, I think there will be a short-term increase in demand. I mean, we've already seen this on the news. This is a bit of a theory on my part, but we've already seen this on the news that people are desperate to get out of lockdown. They want to travel. They want to jump on an airplane somewhere and fly somewhere just to, to experience a change of scenery. So I think, again, that will possibly drive more people to business aviation if they want to avoid the airport and the commercial air transportation, especially charter, because charter is an easy entry into business aviation. So that'll drive more people into business aviation, I believe, through charter. What we've also seen, for example, is we've actually had customers that have asked us to fly somewhere because they have a sick relative, for example, in another country. So they're going to be even more conscious of flying safely and staying safe themselves, not to risk infecting their already, sick relative. So that's the sort of thing that private individuals are going to be thinking more of. And obviously travel with families. When I speak from personal experience, I mean, obviously we have we have the airplane, so it's a much easier way to travel. But we just wouldn't consider flying airline, and it just sounds very, very difficult to do so, or very challenging, at least in the short term. So I think, again, for private individuals, they're going to be drawn more to business aviation to at least explore it and taste it and touch it and get a sense of what it's about. And then maybe they'll convert, and stay more loyal business aviation customers in the future. Time will tell.
And I know you mentioned the versatility of the PC-12. I'm talking more so here as a turboprop option, and the fact that it's one of the greenest machines out there on the market. It's often advertised that turboprop aircraft is a more cost-effective solution for private travel. Apart from the benefits that you've already mentioned with the PC-12 as that turboprop option, are there any other advantages to turboprop in private travel that you can enlarge upon?
Yeah, not only private travel, actually. If you look at the airline industry as well, you see when there have been times of economic hardship or downturn, there's been a big sort of increase in airlines buying regional turboprops. So, turboprops are more cost effective than jets. And, I think there's a misconception. A turboprop is nothing more than a turbine engine driving a propeller, hence the name turboprop. Whereas a jet is a turbine engine driving a fan, hence the name turbofan for a jet. So it's actually pretty much the same technology, but a propeller is much more efficient, and that's what drives the cost down. Another advantage of a propeller as well is the ability to take off and land much shorter than a jet. So the slow speed performance of a propeller is better than a jet, and that allows you to be able to get in and out of shorter strips. So what that does, I mean, the sweet spot really are the shorter destinations, not so much the longer trips. So you're probably better off in a jet in terms of time saving. But for the shorter trips, typically in a PC-12, hour and a half, that's really the sweet spot for the PC-12. Because of the short field ability with a propeller, you can use smaller airfields that are closer to your final destination, that might even be grass. And again, that can save you time on your door-to-door journey, and time is money. So you're not only saving fuel, you're saving time. And another big saving with a turboprop for private aviation is if you're using the smaller airports, you're exposed to less onerous costs. Obviously the costs of larger airports are much higher. The costs of going through an FBO are much higher with jets. So that's another big advantage.
And with private flying, Edwin, what are the various options that are available to individuals?
So I'd say, we spoke a lot about new entrants coming into the industry. So I'd say the starting point is charter. That's the easiest thing, because people aren't, obviously if people are buying an aircraft, there's a lot that comes with it. Whereas charter is just one flight, and it's a relatively lower cost or capital outlay for that one flight. And it also allows customers to test various aircraft types. They can get exposed to all the different airplanes. They get an understanding of business aviation, and it's a great introduction. However, as utilization, or as the customer flies more than let's say a few tens of hours per year, it very soon becomes apparent that there are more cost-effective ways on an hourly basis of flying. And that's really when customers start to move into fractional. And there are, in typical fractional company, you have a lot of large companies out there with very similar looking aircraft. So you buy a fraction in an aircraft that entitles you to fly a certain number of hours. And that gives you access to a tail number, so one particular aircraft. But in reality, you can use lots of different aircraft. So you get a lot of flexibility, a lot of versatility, all the service, everything's taken care of for you. And again, after a certain point, that also starts to get, after a certain number of hours, whole aircraft ownership starts to look much more cost effective. And part of that also is syndication. So if you have a group of people and you all know each other, I'll give you an example. We have a syndicate. There are 4 people who own a PC-12. They all know each other. So they all have complementary schedules. They own that one aircraft. and they fly 700 hours a year in that aircraft in total in aggregate. So, the airplane flies 700 hours a year. Now that's actually more utilization than a lot of fractional aircraft, similar fractional aircraft, and yet the price point per hour is less. So you don't get quite. So what you lose is you don't get quite the same level of service because you only have access to one airplane, not a fleet of aircraft. But the airplane is still fully managed, and the cost per hour is significantly lower for syndicated ownership than fractional ownership. The other benefit is flexibility. So if you're in a syndicate, for example, if you're an owner pilot, you're more likely to be able to fly the aircraft yourself. If you're with a fractional, you won't be able to fly the airplane yourself. So it gives you more flexibility. And of course, if you want ultimate flexibility, aircraft ownership. So again, that really is for customers typically are entrepreneurs who have their own business. They might use the aircraft for business purposes and for leisure purposes. So the utilization is much higher. What's also interesting is we find customers who transition to whole aircraft ownership tend to use the airplane far more than they ever thought they would, simply because the marginal cost is lower. They're only paying for fuel. Once they've already paid their fixed costs, they're only paying for fuel, for airport fees. And again, in the PC-12, that can be quite low if you're landing in a grass strip. So the marginal cost is lower, so it gets people out of cars and out of trains, as we've seen before in our previous example. So that's a very, very broad brush overview of the different options. There's also leasing. So if companies want to have the aircraft and keep it off balance sheet, there's operating leases available, but that's starting to get into financing now. But it does keep the asset off balance sheet. The customer pays a certain amount per month, a bit like a car financing scheme where everything's taken care of. With certain customers, that's more attractive. That's a brief overview.
No, appreciate that, Edwin. And obviously, one of my final questions that I wanted to ask, with the options for anyone that an interested party through either form, if they were looking to arrange a demo flight, how do you ensure that they're kept COVID safe at the moment? As we go forward over the next few months.
Yeah, I mean, we have certain procedures in place. So we make sure, for example, that the pilot is not, doesn't show any symptoms of coronavirus and has to have been symptom-free for the previous 2 weeks. So that's very important. And the pilot's checked. If the pilot is showing symptoms, obviously either another pilot is brought on board, or the demo is postponed. Customers are given the choice of wearing protective masks and gloves that we provide. Obviously, there are no handshake greetings. That's all gone out of the window now. Pilots can wear protective masks if it makes the customers feel better, although ICAO actually don't recommend it, but that's more because of oxygen masks. So if we're flying below flight level 100, a local demo, if the customer wants us to wear a mask, we can for lower flights. But if we're doing a longer flight, we shouldn't really be wearing masks just in case we have to, wear an oxygen mask. The great thing, really is because of the PC-12 and the PC-24 is a relatively large aircraft, you're pretty well socially isolated and distanced. You can certainly keep more than 2 meters distancing. The pilots are in the front. Generally our customers sit in the back of the aircraft. They don't sit in the front with the pilot. So it's quite easy to maintain social distancing as long as you don't have too many people on the aircraft. And we also do things like, we check where customers and pilots have traveled to or from in the last 30 days to make sure there are no high-risk locations. And we require them to complete a self-declaration form just to make sure everyone is kept safe. And also to remove unnecessary exposure, we remove onboard soft furnishings such as cushions, blankets, that kind of thing, just to make it as safe as possible. It's really it's individual, case-by-case basis. We speak to the customer and we just make sure they're absolutely comfortable and happy with our requirements and make sure we risk assess it.
Adrian, thank you for that. And if anyone wanted to find out any more information with regards to getting in touch with Oriens Aviation or get in contact with you or your colleagues, what other details or where can they find that?
Thank you, Alex. Yeah, www.oriensaviation.com. All the details are on there. Our contact details are there. And we're very much looking forward to getting in touch.
Brilliant, Edwin. I'm going to take this opportunity to remind viewers that are live now and those that will be looking over the next 24, 48 hours. If you do appreciate the topic and answers that have been covered today, please do show some appreciation. Follow our guest at Oriens Aviation, I believe is our handle, and obviously ourselves at Private Flyer Show, covering the topic of the value of private flying as we look ahead to the new normal. Edwin, thank you so much for your time today. Really do appreciate it. And stay busy and hope things start picking up for you and for all of us in private aviation.
It's a real pleasure. Thank you so much for having me, Alex. Really appreciate it. It's been fun.
No worries. Thank you, Edwin.